Hey everybody, welcome to Extra Time presented by AT&T 5G. I am David Goss from the heart of the greatest city in the history of the world, alongside exposed brick wall Calen Carr and Ghanaian Black Star, one of our favorites at center back, Jordan Angeli. We got a squad in for this one. Jordan, are you stoked to be with us?
I'm so excited. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, I'll gladly take the center back position if that's what the team needs here.
Well, we've got Calen running around up top.
Yeah.
I will
putting
not
in
be, I will
goals.
be doing no defending. Zero.
Great.
Zero
Well,
defending.
I'll just put it right here on my shoulders then, Calen. No worries.
Chiellini-esque from Jordan Angeli in this one. We have an incredible show coming up from the AT&T 5G virtual studios here. It was a wild, wacky weekend of Major League Soccer. It started on Friday night with an incredible LAFC Seattle game. Then it rolled through multiple 4-4 games on Saturday. And then, of course, Wayne Rooney and Orlando Magic. Whoa. Orlando City always cause magic.
Yeah. They wish they had some magic in that game.
Yeah, I just got Disney-fied right there in the middle of the show. So it was awesome. We're going to talk through all of it, some of the big things we saw this weekend. And then, of course, the Leagues Cup Showcase on Wednesday night. We've got games on Tuesday night in MLS action, some MLS games on Wednesday night as well. But a doubleheader at SoFi Stadium. LA Galaxy against Chivas, LAFC against Club America. The first ever soccer games at SoFi Stadium. It is going to be electric. It is going to be massive. Those games on ESPN and Univision. So we're going to talk all about that as we head into the final weekend before the MLS All-Star game presented by Target in Minnesota next week. So it's going to be a good one. Let's start digging in here. And we're going to start with the wild and wacky that was across Major League Soccer. This is from OptaJack. They said, for the first time in MLS history, 2 matches on a single day have ended where both teams scored at least 4 goals. Madness, wild MLS matches. That was Saturday. It was 4-4 to open things up in Minnesota against the Portland Timbers. And you're thinking, that's the peak. The first game of the day, 4-4, 3-1 at halftime. Portland comes back. They make it 4-3. Minnesota comes back and makes it 4-4. That's done. No way. And Inter Miami and FC Cincinnati say, hold my beer. They show up. And Gonzalo Higuain scores a hat trick, and we are rolling into the weekend. Calen, I don't think it's a coincidence that Matt Doyle was quote-unquote on vacation this weekend, and Gonzalo Higuain got his first start in a couple months and got the hat trick. But you got to be feeling those Higuain vibes now.
Yeah. Didn't somebody, you said beforehand, somebody wrote in to say that this was like MLS After Dark, but like starting off with bottomless mimosas?
Yeah, it was brunch. It was an early one.
Yeah.
I think it was a 1 p.m. local kick in Minnesota with the 4-4.
Yeah, I mean, that was amazing. And Higuain, I mean, that set piece was just ridiculous. It looked like it was like computer generated with the like pace that came off it. And it reminded me of his first goal I think he scored in MLS, where you were like, oh, this is just what it's going to be like. He's just going to be hitting up like top bins all day. But you know what? I will say you should give him a ton of credit, because it would have been very easy to like pack in this season and to say, all right, well, I'm in Miami. I'm going to be out to lunch, so to speak. This is going to be my own, like, just kind of giving up. But even off the bench is really where I think he's been, best used. And I think he will return to that role. But in this moment, they really needed someone to step up, and the quality, that doesn't go away. Give him a dead ball. I think also the connection there with Pozuelo, just having somebody that has the ideas to find him in good spots, and can continue to like connect those dots to him and see some of the things that he sees. Because in the moments where we've seen him at his worst, it's mostly been with him just getting frustrated at his own teammates and not being able to generate chances on his own, because that's just not really the type of player he is, and not the type of place that he's at in his career as far as being able to kind of just create opportunities for himself through his work rate or anything like that. But instead, it's if you actually give him the ball in the box and you slip him in behind and you play a seeing eye pass as Pozuelo did, then you can say, oh, wow, yeah, I see the composure, I see the finishing ability, and we saw a lot of that. Now, it looked like it was in a good shape, and then all of a sudden it turned the other way, which is kind of the bad Miami. I think we saw some of the best and worst of both teams in this game.
Yes.
It was kind of tough to come away to be like, who felt better, who felt worse. But I think for the fan, for the neutral is amazing. Yeah, it's great. Like, that's what we want.
And Mark Anthony, because his song got played 4 times every time Miami scored a goal.
He was just smiling too with his glasses. And his lady.
He was so happy.
Just so happy.
Yes, that's very
I
important.
would agree, Calen. I feel like it was of course there's going to be good things that both these teams take out of this, but it was kind of a lesson on how to capitalize in transition and also how to capitalize when the opponent scores a goal, because both of the first 2 goals that Cincinnati scored were right after Miami scored, and it was like a punch in the face. Like, Miami, if you're going to be this good going forward, well, you've got to solidify some things in transition moments in defense. But all in all, guys, I kind of feel like this is the best balanced Miami team that we've seen. Am I wild to say that?
No, I think the last 2 home games have been the most possession they've had in a game all season, right?
And I feel like a lot of that has to say is Calen talked about Pozuelo and what he can do with Higuain, and Higuain getting his head back into it. But if you have a player like Pozuelo, it allows Mota and Gregory to just kind of be a little bit more defensive. Not to say that Gregory won't get into the attack, although in that second Brenner goal, the Acosta pass, Gregory got in the attack and there was a huge gap centrally. So I think Pozuelo allows those 2 to sit a little bit more, be distributors, and then not put so much stress on their midfield to be playmakers, and let Pozuelo be that playmaker. And it just felt like a lot more balance, even with how the outside backs were moving. This Miami squad might have found what could be a really good balance for them. And I don't know, do you take Higuain out now? Because after that performance, he gets 3 goals. I know Campana has been amazing, but hey, that's a problem that Miami hasn't had, is a couple of options up front this year.
Yeah, and the funny part is actually when they did take him out was actually when they began to concede those goals late. Now, I'm not going to presume to think that Higuain is going to be out there chasing down balls in the box and stopping Brandon Vasquez from getting on the end of things. But I do think he can be used. I just think Miami's a better team overall with Campana, and because of the energy that he brings. And defensively, they're not quite strong enough to be able to withstand pressure. So I think you got to use, throughout the course of a season, the fact that you can use both of them is, definitely a strength for them. But I think they'll be better suited if they want to get closer towards the playoffs. And this was, I would say, a missed opportunity for them, because to have the lead and they going into the last 10 minutes of the match and they give up 2 goals. And yes, they show their spirit to fight back in, but for me, it was more 2 points lost than 1 point saved, just based on where they were at that point in the game.
On the Campana front, he has scored 1 goal in MLS since May 28th, and that was actually as a sub against FC Dallas. Now, international break, he was away with Ecuador, so he only has 6 or 7 games in there. But it sort of shows you his hot form early on has not maybe continued, and it makes sense, not just from you lost your spot. I think just from a rest point of view of okay, Higuain comes in, he plays a good game. Now you can sort of play with energy in your next game. But Calen, you talked about for Higuain the frustration. It stands out to me that he fakes to drop in on that goal and then cuts into the box, and Pozuelo hits him for the pass, where for the last year he's had to drop in and be the 10. He would actually have come to get that ball to try and create, and it would just be a train wreck. And now he's got a guy who has played with him for 12 minutes ever, and he's hitting that ball before Higuain even makes the run, because that's the sort of wavelength they're both on. And it was awesome to watch. It was impressive. Pozuelo had a goal called off a Ryan Taylor back heel that was I got up and was yelling in my living room, and then they called it back, and I was so upset. But it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I've got videos. All the Ring cameras here that are recording me at all times. It felt like old school studio style. I was standing on the couch. So that's the Inter Miami side. Let's jump over to the FC Cincinnati side. And as Calen said, 2 points dropped for Inter Miami. So 1 point gained here you have to feel for FC Cincinnati on the road. Lucho Acosta's first game back from suspension. He has the assist on, I think, the second goal, which was Brenner's second goal. Brenner gets 2. Vasquez gets 2. And Jordan, to me, I walk away from this game saying, like, Cincinnati is going to score against everyone. The questions are just on defense.
Yeah, and there's a lot of questions on defense. But the way those 3 work in the triangle and shifting lines, because Vasquez sometimes comes into the midfield, so does Brenner. Brenner likes to come into the midfield, pop wide, and that allows Acosta to go in behind. They are a handful, those 3, and the way that they move. And to have a player like Acosta who, I mean, he comes back in this game and just shows off. Like this guy is so good, and to have 2 forwards in front of him who are goal dangerous, can pop up in a lot of different spaces, but can finish. That pass that Acosta had with the outside of his foot, and it was like a perfect Ray Hudsonism where he said that pass could make onions cry.
Yeah, it was good.
Was so good because it did. It was just a thing of beauty. But we have seen players in that situation, and we saw them this weekend where they're not finishing that goal. And Brenner finishes it really neatly. And this Cincinnati team, they have the ability in transition, and even sometimes when they have a little bit of possession, to build up and have 2 players in goal scoring situations with Brenner and Vasquez. They're a lot to handle, but the questions really are all defensively. How do they manage, if they can't manage a FC or Inter Miami team, what's that going to look like when push comes to shove at the end of the season and you really need a victory and you really need to rely on their defense? And those 3 center backs haven't been cutting it.
It's been tough. Tyler Blackett gave up a penalty kick in this one, somewhat controversially, almost got called for another one. Jeff Cameron, I think you saw in a couple of the highlights, struggling to sort of keep up with things. It's pretty chaotic at the back line. I sort of brought this up in our production meeting. Is there anywhere in MLS they could get help at the center back position, which is not exactly a position of depth and luxury across Major League Soccer? But I thought of the LAFC guys, right? Because Chiellini's in. Obviously, the idea is to sell Mamadou Fall and maybe Eddie Segura as well later on. Could you work a loan in there? Eddie Segura, how many minutes is he going to get this year? Can you bring him in on loan? I think about Houston with Tim Parker, who's on a lot of money for them and has started off and on, but Steris is in the rotation there, and he seems like a guy who could just upgrade athletically, especially that back line for FC Cincinnati. Is there anyone else that comes to mind, or am I barking up the wrong tree because Atlanta United already tried this and it doesn't exist?
There's nobody that jumps off to me. I actually look at this game and say, I think Cincinnati is going to have to play some matches like this. And they've been kind of holding on for a while without Acosta to say, like, they have a string of draws in a row, but weren't able to kind of hit that next gear. And I remember a match about maybe a month and a half ago where they drew NYCFC 4-4. And they have, I think they show they have the firepower to go like toe to toe in this type of match. I think, obviously they prefer not to. I think there was a game earlier, 3-3 against Philadelphia as well too, earlier in the year. So against the higher scoring. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say they played Montreal to 4-3 games as well. So they've played a lot of those games.
And they gave up 5 to Austin in week 1 as well.
Yeah,
but a lot of examples, Calen. There's a lot of examples.
I'm picking the ones I want. Okay. I think this team can, with Acosta, they can go toe to toe with anybody. I think it's going to be they do rotate that back line a fair amount, and part of it might be to find some rests. Part of it might be trying to search for the right answers as you get closer to the playoffs. But I think it's going to be. I think they can play this type of game and get results. I think they'll just feel bad, like at that last goal where they just kind of sag off a little bit too far deep, the misclearance here and there. Like if they can iron those 2 little things up, they come out of this with a 4-3 win. And I think they'd be fine playing those type of matches if they need to.
It's definitely
their fans are loving it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's definitely entertaining. It's definitely fun, especially after what TQL Stadium experience was like last year. I'm sure they'll take 4-3 and 3-4 over anything else.
some of those matches I referenced was kind of pre-Brenner, in the sense of like what we see him now, and just that ball that you mentioned, Jordan, was so beautiful from Lucho. But for me, what stood out was we know he can hit those types of passes, but I was like, Brenner's just the calm and confidence to be able to take his touch and just cleanly hit that far post. If he can do that consistently, and we've just seen him more and more now, just coming into his own, even first-time finishes. Those ones where sometimes we've seen him almost have too much time to think. He just looked like a different player, just really confident to be able to step up and take that. So with him and Vasquez as sort of complementary pieces, Vasquez drags people in so many different directions, and then you have this kind of slasher that can get in behind or make use of that space in between. It's pretty deadly, especially when you think of them like moving on the counterattack.
Yeah, they're fun.
So if you like goals, just to set your calendar, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday, FC Cincinnati coming off a 4-4 draw, host the Philadelphia Union coming off a 6-0 win. So just throw that one in the calendar real quick, just in case you want to tune in. That is going to be wild. We're going to talk more about Philly, but they had an basically record-setting July when it came to goal scoring form, but they were not the second highest scoring game of the weekend, because there was another 4-4 game. Minnesota United against the Portland Timbers. Calen, you said it. Open bar brunch for this one, as we got it started early at Allianz. 4-4, 3-1. I believe Portland took a 1-0 lead.
Wait, wasn't it 14 seconds? It was like 15 seconds or something.
Yeah, insane. It was the fourth fastest goal in MLS history, I believe.
I think I was playing in the match that the fastest goal happened. I could
be
wrong.
I think
Tim
you're wrong.
Cahill scored against Houston, and like it couldn't have been longer than 15 seconds. It had to be close.
You could be right. I thought it was Mike Grella against the Philadelphia Union. Hey, okay. Anders is in the chat saying, isn't it Grella as well?
All right.
He had one where they pressed them, but either way, good for the Red Bulls, I guess, because they score a lot of early goals. But this game was wild, Jordan. It was just like fun. I think when you have that type of atmosphere, like every time Minnesota scored, the place exploded. Obviously, that stadium is as well made as any in the league, and you really feel the passion, you feel the energy in those moments. And these were the whole conversation last week was either these are the two hottest teams in MLS, 7 unbeaten for the Timbers. Minnesota had won 6 of 7 and had drawn the other one, so they were also 7 unbeaten since the international break. Reynoso was back, and it just, from an entertainment quality point of view, it just delivered in this one.
I was bummed. I was driving up to Cleveland to call our game, and every time I checked the app, it was like 2 more goals had been scored. So I missed like the actual playing of this game, but knew there was so much to get back to in anticipation of what the heck was happening in Minnesota. But kind of, I think what we all hoped for. You just talked about what these teams form and how good they've been playing in this stretch of the season, and hoping to be peaking at the right time, because we've seen the Timbers do that before, of get into the middle of summer and start to then find their form and get to a place where they're really difficult to beat. But for Minnesota, this is, a little disappointing that I think they don't take all 3 points because of how good they played in key critical moments and the number of different players that they got on the score sheet. I think this Minnesota squad we've talked about them a lot and how they haven't been able to score, and here they are putting 4 goals away. Granted, it's the Timbers, and I'm not sure about some of their defensive structure as far as especially the outside backs go, but man, that was so fun to be a part of and to be able to watch that game.
It was special. In this one, Calen, you said Blanco with the early goal. He had 2 goals in this game. He also had a ball that came off his foot on the side of the box towards the goal, deflected off Kamar Lawrence, and went in off Dane St. Clair, which was listed as an own goal. Reminder, Portland Timbers have never had a player score a hat trick in an MLS game.
Yeah.
That would have been it. And I think
come on.
Sebastian Blanco is attempting to play the ball in the direction of the goal, and it goes in. I have seen worse called. Give Sebastian Blanco the goal.
Oh, my God. Goss, come on, man. You think he thought that was going in? He was just going to play a nice little square ball across the face of the goal, and he's like, this is definitely going to tuck in the far post past Dane St. Clair. Nah, I don't think so.
He's just causing danger across the face of goal, Calen.
Yeah, it was. Good stuff happened. Good stuff did happen for him. But no, it took a little slight deflection. I think own goal was the right call. But he was really good in this one. I mean, obviously from the beginning, you can just tell as he's going through that, and it was a nice little combination play between, I think, 3 different Timbers players. But he was the center point of all of it. But just the extra little bit of calm, things just seemed to look a little slower for him, where he asks for the ball, it goes by him. He doesn't, he stays in it. It comes back, he asks for it again. The first touch, the nice little left foot lifted one to the far corner. And then even on the second goal, where he just takes it first time, the technique just to hit that clean right there. And, Dane St. Clair, that was an unlucky one, but he's been tough to beat this year. 4 goals on him on the day was impressive. But, yeah, I agree with you, Jordan, in the sense that for being so unsettled with that early goal, which can shake a team, and we've seen the Timbers at times not be able to kind of recover from that. They really, Timbers were put up there. Minnesota United.
Minnesota, yeah.
They've stormed back and had much better of it. And it hasn't just, while Reynoso has been the centerpiece, it wasn't just him. They've added more pieces. Amarillo has been really good. I mean, finding his form as of late. Bongo as well was dangerous, gives them some nice balance on the other side of the pitch from Fragapane. Mm-hmm. So set pieces even, they get the nice finish on the set piece, which was a good setup. So, Minnesota is where they are for a reason. They've been really good. You can see the confidence. And then it just kind of turned against them as time went on, and they made some mistakes and got a little bit unlucky there. But, this was a fun one.
Kervin Arriaga's back. Some rumors around additional players for them. On the Portland side, Niashkota gets another goal. He's been hot since coming back from that injury, which is huge for them. I think Santiago Moreno's been phenomenal this season. So a lot of excitement on both teams. Let me ask you this right now. Which team do you feel higher on for this season? Minnesota right now, 3rd place on 35 points. The Portland Timbers are finally in the playoff spots. They are 7th place right now on 31 points. Equal games played. I'm not just saying who finishes higher in the standings. Say, who do you have more stock in to make a playoff run, to host a playoff game, however you want to judge it. Which one do you feel better about?
You going first, Calen, or me?
Yeah, I'll go first. I'll say Minnesota I'm going to split your questions. I know you tried to focus it for me, but Minnesota for sure, as far as finishing in the table and finishing the season strong, and I think they'll be in a better place. I still have questions. Reynoso has been amazing in the playoffs, but last year was just such a letdown, and at that point, that whole team just kind of seemed to implode. And when I look at this Portland team, when you have a player like Sebastian Blanco who is rounding into form, and if they can get into the playoffs, we have seen time and time again how good this team can be with Savarese, the way he gets these guys going at the right time of year. And it looks a little bit to me like they could potentially make a deep run and have the right pieces, especially with Blanco, because I just think that one piece is so important. Reynoso has gone off in the playoffs, but I think based on the position and where he plays, if teams kind of begin to clamp down a little bit, yes, they have more options. I think they've done a good job of building that. But I would still go with Portland if you gave me a one-off game between the two of them, home or away in the playoffs.
I'm with you. I'm saying Portland. Just because of their track record and how many players on this team have really been a part of the squad for, I guess it isn't that many when you think about it now that I'm saying that. They don't have the consistency in their lineup. There has been a lot of changes, but my first 3 points that I wrote down were Blanco, Chara, and Niashkota. And I think even Jimmy Chara and what he has done, and then you add in Santiago. Wait, is that right?
Santiago Moreno.
Yeah, Moreno. Santiago Moreno as another player. What those 4 players can do in transition moments just makes it so difficult. And I am not And that's even saying with me not being convinced about the outside backs for Portland, because the third goal and the fourth goal for Minnesota were both just not very good pressing moments from the outside backs. Easy crosses, easy ability for Minnesota to score against them. But there's something about Portland when they get into these win or go home games where I just feel like I think it's going to be the Timbers.
Not only the fullbacks, by the way. Then Minnesota breaks the pressure. Suparic comes over, and Luis Amarillo drops his shoulder and gets inside for that goal, like
Yes.
I was defending on that one. For
So the
Suparic.
questions are there.
The questions
what
are
would you
there
say, Gus? Are
defensively.
you saying Minnesota?
I'm saying Minnesota, especially if, I mentioned it a moment ago, the rumor is Jonathan Gonzalez, who is 23 years old, center mid, which is their biggest weakness right now just because of injuries, where if they could get someone who could take a bunch of minutes at that spot and get them into the playoffs healthy, then you can sort of manage Will Trapp if you have to, or Arriaga, or whatever it is. So right now, where we stand, I would take Minnesota as well. Yet, I always respect playoff Larry, because Luis Mabiala shows up when the lights are at their brightest. He loves a playoff run, as does Diego Chara. It's going to be fun to continue to watch these two as they roll along. Let's finish with our big game, our other big surprise, our big moment, our big game of the weekend. It was Orlando Magic, but not in the NBA way and not in the good way. For Orlando City, it was Wayne Rooney Magic, as he managed his first game ever for DC United. His visa comes through. He is able to be the one standing on the sideline, the one sort of leading them through this game. And then they score 2 goals in stoppage time, the 91st and 96th minute from Chris Durkin, and then Taxi Fontas to win 2-1 against Orlando City. And this is what they do. You have obviously the Rooney tackle and then cross to Lucho. It was against Orlando as a player in 2018. Remember, DC went down to Orlando and scored 5 in a 5-3 win just a few weeks ago. Taxi Fontas had a hat trick in that one, and now DC does it again. And Calen, it sort of was like the energy in the building that they've been looking for and sort of were expecting Rooney would bring, and it all happened like 90 minutes in.
Yeah, I mean, the last 10 minutes were fun in this one, and like it seemed like the crowd got into it at the end. A wet day, and I think Taxi had missed one earlier that Gallese made a really nice save on, but is one that you generally see Taxi finish. So to get that chance late, took it very well. I think, what is that, 11th goal you said of the year for him?
Yes.
So he's, I mean, for not having, all of the pieces around him and having that partner that I think DC still needs to go out and find, you can see what he's able to do. And for me, it was really a lot about Wayne Rooney. Yes, he's been around for a little while. He's been around the club, but hasn't been able to be on the sideline. And I just think I think he said afterwards, the season starts here. But I do think there is a little bit of a freshness or an extra bit that you put in as far as trying to impress the manager or not giving up or pushing. And it was something that I had said when he came in, to say it's going to be really difficult for someone on the side to say, oh, I'm not going to track back, or I'm not going to push late in the match because of that play against Orlando, or because of the fact that he had, not just that he was Wayne Rooney and what he'd done in his career, but what he had done during his time in MLS for DC. So I think hopefully that spirit comes through. It is just one game, super important for them to just find some footing and not have it be just another, okay, here we go again, which is what I was thinking it was headed, where I was thinking it was headed at halftime. So they'll be able to, I think that will give them a big lift to get going, but I still think there are bigger problems, especially when you look at that back line, because there were opportunities for Orlando that they weren't, that they didn't take, and kept DC in the match, and then ultimately ended up leaving with 3 points.
It was Rooney's debut, which overshadowed a bit his first signing. Ravel Morrison making his debut as well. Jordan, what did you see from him and sort of what he can bring to DC United?
Well, first off, I think just the way that DC is playing under Rooney, and they kind of already started this playing in a 4-2-3-1. Gosh, those defenders have to be so happy that they just aren't playing like having to make uncomfortable decisions all the time, putting fires out. And I think that the stability of the team really is there now. And it's a little bit more set up to allow players like Ravel or even Martin Rodriguez, who came in later in the game, to shine. And I liked Ravel. He started as the 10 in a 4-2-3-1, but I would say the difference, I thought the second half was much better from DC because of the changes that they made, and they brought Morrison back into one of those 6 spots alongside Durkin, and then they had Martin Rodriguez as a left winger and Taxi Fontas as that number 10. And what that allowed is Rodriguez liked to come inside, Fontas likes to get through, or there was fluidity on that side of the field between those two players. But Ravel Morrison was just bossing the field. If you go back and watch that game, he's like pointing and telling everybody where to play the ball and saying, okay, go here, now play it there. Now I'm going to play it to you, give it back to me. And I think that is going to be a benefit since he's played under Rooney before. He knows how Rooney wants to play. He can go in there and set the tone. I think sometimes it was a bit, for his first game, maybe a bit like much. Like, I don't know about you, Calen, but I don't want someone bossing me and telling me every single decision I'm supposed to play. But I think in the second half, him playing a little bit lower, he could get on the ball more, which is what DC needs. They need midfielders who are comfortable on the ball in all different phases of the game. And I thought he was really effective, just maybe not so much with his longer distribution, but keeping the ball and allowing DC to creep up the field and get the ball onto some more intricate playmakers.
I thought when I've seen Ravel Morrison as well, that's where I think he's been at his best, but he played the 10 for Derby, and that was sort of the conversation. So it will be interesting. I also am kind of jealous that you're already on a first-name basis with Ravel. I've never had
it was
friend.
Ravel on his jersey, so I just went Ravel.
Oh, I didn't even notice that during the game. That's amazing.
It went, I don't know. I always get confused. Like, Miguel Barry is just Miguel this year. He was Barry last year, but now he's just Miguel. But I still call him Barry? I don't know.
I blame
Who
Dex. I blame Mixed Discarude for all of this.
Nice.
All this confusion.
Yes.
You mean K-League All-Star Mixed Discarude or wherever it is I think he's playing now. So a big win for DC United, whether they're in the playoff mix or not. Mix, get it? Da-da-da. No one's there with me. That's fine. I'll be okay. It'll be interesting to watch, but I think they're going to be a lot more fun to watch, of course, under Rooney. Let's talk about some of the other big matches of the weekend. It started on Friday night. LAFC come from behind 2-1 win against the Sounders. Chiellini gets the start. It's his home debut. He looked like he was having fun. The Juve guys were in the house. He was loving life. And then Bale comes off the bench. He also makes his home debut. For this LAFC team, though, I think a big moment for them to come back. And Calen, for the Sounders, I think you see once again that they really miss Raul Ruidiaz. They opened up a bit. They created chances, I thought, at the start as well as later on to try and come back. And it's not a knock on Will Bruin. It's just Ruidiaz is one of the elite center forwards. And with João Paulo out and Obed Vargas out, there's enough injuries for them to overcome. And it feels like Ruidiaz might be one too many.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way of summing up the way I saw this one. It's going to be very difficult for any team in MLS to go up against this LAFC team with the depth that they have and not be at full strength and not have all of their available pieces. And you can make some changes where, okay, they've lost João Paulo, and yes, they've lost Obed Vargas, and now they've dropped Roldan to a little bit of a deeper spot. But once you start plugging and moving different pieces around a bunch, and then you lose Ruidiaz, suddenly those margins become a little bit slimmer. And I actually thought that I was like, oh, here we go again, because there was that play where Roldan is able to win the ball in a high spot and then actually gets sized up one-on-one against Chiellini and gets past him to get the ball across. And that was the one time where I was like, oh, okay, teams are going to be looking to see if they can isolate Chiellini in those types of moments, especially in transition where he was a little bit late pulling up off the back line. And I think, if you're looking at anything, that might be something to look at. But in the moments where we've seen LAFC lose to Seattle, it's been one opportunity that's opportunistic like that, and then a second one where Ruidiaz just gets a play, top of the box, and just punishes you. And I think they missed a little bit of that top-end quality or missing that from Ruidiaz. That said, this LAFC team is different too. Like, they are different than the LAFC teams we've seen in the past as far as their ability to come from behind. Carlos Vela looked like Vela, we know. And then we saw Opoku was really good. I mean, obviously the goal, but even in some of his combination play, looked really energetic and good. Ilie, I have looked at when they go out into the market and say, I know he's an all-star and deserves it. He was really good. I think they could potentially use another little bit of a different tool in the toolbox to play a little bit more defensive or somebody that's more of a ball winner 6. But you see why he's so valued there, because just all the little passes and ways he plays out of trouble. But actually, that's also where they got burned in the first half, was he plays a nice little lifted ball, and you see the quality there to do that or to even think of that. But then also it comes the other way, and he's not able to win it, and then it exposes Chiellini one-on-one. So this LAFC team is definitely a problem. I think they wanted to go out and prove something this one. It had the hype of like a playoff atmosphere, because I think this LAFC team is still thinking we're probably going to see this team at some point in the playoffs, or we need to be ready for this. So I liked it from that standpoint, because it had a little extra on this one with like 12 games left or whatever it is. But it looked like a preview.
Yeah, the night game at Bank of California, that thing bumps. You bring Seattle in there, I agree with you. It felt big. It felt like a big moment. I like that you bring up Ilie Sanchez, because there's an article that came out in a Spanish newspaper that Ilie Sanchez said that Gareth Bale only speaks to him in Spanish. And when he and other Spanish-speaking players on the team speak to Gareth Bale in English, he responds in Spanish, which, of course, famously was one of the big issues he had at Real Madrid, was that he refused to speak Spanish with the media, and all the fans said that he wasn't one of them, and blah, blah, blah. To be clear, I'm not saying that any of that is wrong, because I speak less than one language, and I struggle with it at many times. But also, I just like that Gareth Bale's now living his life in LA, and he's like, I don't have to worry about any of this anymore. I live on the beach, I hit the golf course, and then I go chip people on the weekends in Kansas City.
Footy.
Yeah, except for the 102-degree weather. They seem to be less a fan of that one.
Can I add one more thing before we go on to the next game, just with LAFC? And I like that shout, Calen. Of
what would have happened?
Yeah.
What would happen if
I probably would have
We
kept
would have
talking.
done it anyways.
Cool.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm into that. Jordan, that's
Yeah.
why we're best friends. That's why I respect
Calen and
you.
I
am the captain now. Yeah.
yeah, we would have just taken over. I like the shout of someone just a little bit more ball winning in that 6th position, because it is like champagne problems for LAFC going forward, and the number of players that they have who are so good in attack. So to have someone that's a little better at winning balls in those moments and then keeping possession. I mean, not that Ilie struggles in possession,
But is that Seba Mendes?
Tougher.
For both of you guys, right? Isn't that why they went and got him?
Yeah. That's a good shout. So maybe just, we haven't seen him
we have not.
be able to play. Yeah. So, okay, good point there. The thing I was going to say is I was impressed with Cifuentes, who we've seen in those line dribbling plays so many times, or dishing the last little final ball. But I feel like it was different this game because Seattle had so many players back. He dropped off and he was still playing dimes into the box and finding longer passes, which I think is a part of his game that we don't often have to see, but we got to see against Seattle in this game, which, like, okay, well, what can't this guy do?
He is 100% going to start for Ecuador right now at the World Cup. So on the first day of the World Cup, he's going to be on display globally. He had the assist to Carlos Vela. That Vela had the handball, and 100%. That's what I'm saying. Like, all of these moves, it's like, well, where are all the roster spots? It's like, not all these guys are going to be here next year in a good way. Mm-hmm. Brian Rodriguez might be sooner rather than later. We're about to talk about Cifuentes. He's unbelievable. He is one of the best young players in this league. I think he's 23 now. Anders is about to check me on that in the chat.
It's always 23. I feel like you guess 23 every time when I'm listening to you.
Because it's a safe in between.
I think he's 23.
It's either 23 or 27. Those are my two. They're all safe in between, so that I could say I wasn't that far off. But he's phenomenal. He's unbelievable. So to go to the Brian Rodriguez stuff, Michele Giannone tweeted, he is 23. Anders just enhanced me. Thank you. I appreciate that. Michele Giannone tweeting out that he believes that the agreement between LAFC and Denis Bouanga, the French Gabonese international winger from Saint Etienne who got relegated out of Ligue 1, they have come to an agreement. So now LAFC needs to come to an agreement with the club, and he believes is looking to move Brian Rodriguez before they bring in Bouanga, which may or may not happen. So not all of it's done, but the talks, it seems like, are real. The possibility is there. He's 27 years old. He's a left winger, so he brings a little bit more experience and consistency than Brian Rodriguez, although obviously none here in North America, which we've seen being a problem for people. I believe he had 9 goals, 6 assists last year in the French First Division for a team that got relegated. So I think the 2 teams I saw that were also pursuing him was Lille and Borussia Mönchengladbach. You guys talked about champagne problems. Why not just bring in a league on winger at the same time for the best team in the
Good
West?
luck, everybody.
They are leading the Supporters Shield race, but right behind them now is the Philadelphia Union. 6-0 winners against the Houston Dynamo. Here's 3 facts just to throw at you real quick. With his goal from a free kick tonight, Jack McGlynn became the 3rd youngest player in MLS history to score from a direct free kick, as the Middle Village Messi got his first professional goal for Jack McGlynn. And then with the 6-0 win, Opta put out that Philadelphia recorded a plus 16 goal differential in the month of July, the 2nd best mark in a single calendar month in MLS history, behind Atlanta United in September of 2017 when they were plus 19. Remember, they got back to Mercedes-Benz. I think they beat the Revs 7-1 like twice or something like that in that month. And that was Almiron and Joseph and all of that. So that's where Philadelphia stands now, guys. And I just ask you this. I think most people would have agreed over the last few months that Philly was the best defensive team in the league. I think some would argue that in places they have the best midfielders in the league. Now Carranza, Ura, and Gazdag have combined for 25 goals already up top, and they put together this plus 16. Are they or are they not Supporters Shield favorites?
No. Just because of the team we just spoke about, LAFC. It's hard to imagine that. Look, I think they're contenders, but I can't say favorites. Favorites is like as it's forgetting what is happening in Los Angeles and the fact that they're going out and fight. And yes, it's nice that all these young academy players are coming through and making big impacts, but that's a little different than going and signing Bale and still waiting to see the best from him in MLS. That's different than getting Chiellini. That's different than getting French Ligue 1 players that are, finished products or, in their prime or close to it. So I think that part is different, but that shouldn't take away from what Philly's doing or the fact that I wouldn't be shocked if they won the Supporters Shield or if LAFC makes a misstep. And part of that is because, it's funny because we listened to a whole part of the season early, and I think Jim Curtin kept saying, this isn't the best for my team. Like, this is not a finished project. And they were still in the top 3 or near the top of the Eastern Conference. And now we're starting to see, okay, you can say, all right, it's DC and Houston. My team should be in the record book as well. As if you get 6 and 7 dropped on you, like you should get a little note at the bottom of that record. But still, like even in the other matches that they've played, like they've been consistent in the back. And then when you get opportunities and you do open up, they're going to kill you. They can do it from wide. They can do it stretching in behind. And the same way we talked about the confidence of the strikers, and this is a part of it. It's not just the young player stepping up, which hopefully we'll talk about in a minute, of just how good some of these young talent that's coming through this Union Academy are. And the fact that they're consistently selling them, playing them. We saw Brendan Aronson this weekend talk about a pass, Jordan. Like that pass through to Bamford was gosh, beautiful. So we're seeing that now happen from the Union on the other side of the ocean, and then also here where we see McGlynn, some of these young guys coming in, but also the strikers, and that's been the big question for them in the past is, okay, Shabilko hits and then doesn't have the form, or Santos, wow, dangerous, but maybe doesn't quite find it, and now you're starting to see Ura, like the way he took those finishes as well with the outside of the foot and just the confidence and ability to stretch. And then Gazdag, who's legit MVP candidate. The 3 of those guys now, like they've been all hitting at the same time.
It is fun to watch, which is not something you've always said about Philly. It's been effective the whole time. But fun. Our 22 under 22 player of the weekend presented by Body Armor obviously is the Jack McGlynn that Calen Carr just mentioned. Jordan, he brings a different element to this team, and I think you're seeing the maturity of him from last year to this year as well. Remember, he started the Eastern Conference Finals because of the COVID issues that they had, and I actually thought was pretty solid in that game. But now you're seeing from solid to something else, and he brings that new element to this midfield.
I'm glad you reminded me of that because I didn't remember that. Because that game just feels like, what in the world happened? I'm sure Philadelphia had the brunt of that, like what is going on. I like how Jack McGlynn and really Bedoya played in this 4-4-2 diamond against Houston. And I don't know if it's because they're playing a 4-3-3 with like a little bit more traditional of a triangle against the team that they were playing against in Houston. But it was McGlynn playing in almost like he picked up the ball where an outside back should pick up the ball in that half space in the middle of the field a lot. And it allowed both him and Bedoya then allowed the outside backs to get really high forward. But the tricky thing, and I think McGlynn did a really good job of this, is when he got the ball there and then he progressed it forward, he would continue his run. And it's like, who's tracking that run? So you would see on both sides of the ball, McGlynn on the left side, Bedoya on the right side. A lot of the times when Philadelphia was getting forward and being effective, it was those two with these late runs into the mix. And I think that has a lot to do with what Jim Curtin, we've heard him say over the last, I would say, month and a half, that he wants his team to play a little bit more, to have a little bit more possession. And I think that's why it's more fun to watch. And those two, it hasn't been McGlynn all the time, but I think with Flock in there and Bedoya and McGlynn, it added a different style of like tactical possession and a mindfulness to the game that was really interesting to watch. And they executed, and that's, I think that front triangle that Calen was just talking about, the two forwards and Gazdag, is very similar to Cincinnati's in how effective they can be and how they can interchange and make it difficult on defenders, who's tracking into the midfield, who's going with that run in behind. So, but McGlynn was really fun to watch, and he's got a nice left foot on him.
Yeah, he's skilled. He's talented. This team is deep now. Jose Martinez not in. They win 6-0. Nathan Harriel and Mbaizo are splitting time. It looks really good for the Philadelphia Union. I'm picking them to win the Supporters Shield. I'm putting my stamp down right now.
I was wondering because you said favorites, and I was thinking, okay, you must be on that train.
I've got a few reasons. One is I do think I talked about this with Susanna Collins on Saturday. I think what we're talking about is a hair here or there. Like, I think we're going to be looking at goal differential or 1 point that separates who wins and who doesn't. And trying to introduce Bale and Chiellini and selling Brian Rodriguez and rumors around Chicho Arango. I think if that means that LAFC takes their eye off the ball for a half second and ties a game they should win or doesn't blow a team out when they should, I think that's what we might be looking back as the difference. Philly doesn't have those problems. Philly's not going to SoFi Stadium to play in front of a sold-out crowd on Wednesday and then traveling to RSL. And I also think when I look at it, and I know it's still a little early, I think LAFC's schedule is slightly harder than Philly in terms of where they have to play and the quality of opponents and the way it's spaced in terms of rest and whatnot. So I'm picking the Philadelphia Union, although in games in hand, NYCFC could equal them, but we'll get to NYCFC in a second because I don't know.
We're not going to mention Austin or NYCFC.
I don't think so. I think it's a two-team race at this point. I'm picking my Philly Union to get it done. Doop, 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 doop. And we're not even going to talk about your Houston Dynamo. Calen, that's my gift to you here on this show.
5 losses in the last 7. I wanted to say it.
Oh, okay,
5 in the last 7. It's not looking good. And the way that this one was, just not tracking runners, very simple stuff. They looked completely disjointed in the back. Runners just continually going in behind. It was brutal. It was brutal to watch for my Dynamo. But I think this is the difference with this Philly team, where so much of it in the past was, yes, defensive solidity, find opportunistic goals where you can. And now it's like, if you don't come and you're not going to track, or you're not, especially against this Philly team, like they're going to run it up on you. And they did.
All right, let's talk about NYCFC. Because I alluded to it for them. 0-0 tie up in Montreal. And let's start with the positive, and it's super positive. This was their 4th straight shutout in MLS action, which is Sean Johnson's second streak this season of 4 shutouts in a row or more. He had 6 back in May in a row, and now he's got 4, which is the first time ever in MLS history that a goalkeeper has done that. He now has 12 on the season with 12 games to play. The record is 16 in one MLS season set by Tony Meola in 2000. There is a very good chance that Sean Johnson breaks that record or ties it this season. Either way, he's having a historic year. He's going to be an all-star for the first time ever. He's in the legitimate conversation to start at MLS Cup. And Calen, he won MLS Cup last year as MLS Cup MVP. He is as good as anyone we've seen. You could argue with Taty gone, he might be the star for NYCFC.
Yeah, I'm not going to be petty, but the fact that he had to be, I think, a commissioner's pick for the All-Star game is
respect, Calen, respect.
Something to say. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I mean, even if you look through the playoff run last year, and you look at them just getting to the final just consistently, and then in the final on pens, just so solid. I got to play with Sean when I was playing in Chicago, and young players always just so way beyond his years as far as maturity goes. I think now is, in my opinion, the third goalkeeper or in the pool for the U.S. national team to go on that trip. And then from there, there's a lot of time to figure it out. I wouldn't be against the idea of I don't know what's going to happen there. I don't know what's going to happen there. And if I saw Sean John in net in Qatar, I would be secure. I would feel confident. So I think, that says a lot about just his consistency, really. And that's the piece for me that is there. And so, I mean, and with Taty leaving, we saw this one, it was not able to generate the same chances. It didn't have that same fulcrum at the end, at the top of, this guy that's just going to be able to create or consistently threaten him behind. And I said I had some questions about how it was all going to look when Taty left, because it's different when you have Eber, who's coming in late in games, and yes, he's scored some goals in limited minutes, but he's played limited minutes. And this is partly because you've had just such an elite, consistent player like Taty that was playing mostly all full matches and in the playoffs through extra time. So it's just, I think Eber is going to be able to find his form, but I think it's going to have to be done more through Talas Magno, through Santi Rodriguez, through some of these guys to be able to lift a little bit more than we've seen them do in the past. But that was the same position that we saw Taty in for a while, where he was playing out wide and then had to adjust and move forward, and we saw him really blossom. It's just how quickly does that happen for a guy like Talas Magno? Because to me, he's the one that would be that piece that could really take the next level. He just has it in him. But I don't know if it's fair to just immediately flip the switch and be like, all right, now you're the man. This guy's gone. Right. You have to do it all. And that's where I think some of that back line solidity actually reminds me more of that Philly team that I talked about in the past, where it's that defensive sound with great goalkeeping. That might be some of the pathway forward. And I think they played a little bit more defensive over the weekend.
I think a lot of that has to do with just not having a forward up there who can do all the things that Taty can do, Calen. And they had to play a little bit more defensive because when they had an outlet, well, who's been their outlet player? It's been Taty holding the ball and being that connecting piece. When they've gone to try to press, he's the start of the press, and he really initiated so much. So I think what happened is when City tried to press, it didn't look very convincing. And Montreal pretty easily passed through their press, which was a little bit discombobulated, and would then get some sustained pressure against New York City. And New York City didn't have an outlet to get the ball to hold the ball up. And I will say, I think it's a difficult one to judge Hébert on, because you're playing against 3 center backs. It's different than probably other games you're gonna see where it comes to space that he can utilize. But it shows you how much Taty did. It wasn't just scoring goals. It really was helping them in being a player who could take so much of the attention that other players could then get a little bit more space and a little bit more success on the ball. So, it wasn't good. But I think that's a big reason why they looked so defensive, is they just didn't have the ability to hold the ball in those transition moments.
The other thing that stands out to me, and I talked to Roberto Abramovich about this on Friday, in terms of they haven't brought any players in. which I think is fair. And I fought back against Weeby on this show saying they don't need to replace Taty. They have the pieces. The piece they have not replaced, though, is James Sands. With Keaton Parks now out for the year again, we saw Maxi Morales start as one of the 2 deeper midfields in this game. Then he goes out injured. And I think there's 2 things. One is central midfield, you're not as deep as you were. 2, as a team now, you are more reliant on Maxi Morales, which is fine as a player because he's capable of carrying you. But he is 35. He has played over 2,500 minutes every year in his MLS career except for 2020, the COVID year. But again, he's 35 years old. And I think you see in this game, him coming off and Taty being out, that might be too much for them to overcome. And they've lost the wiggle room of, well, if Maxi's out, or if Talles Magno's out, or like Taty was out in the Eastern Conference Finals, we've got enough pieces to cover for it. They probably need to be healthy now and in form for them to win.
Yeah, and he's been injured a couple times already this year with just a really dense schedule, coming off MLS Cup, like all that stuff. It puts a toll on players that's a little bit more, it's more demanding than before, and he has been injured. So that's a good idea. They probably do need another midfielder, especially not having Parks to add so much ground that he covered and his ability on the ball. So we'll see. What that was not a good start for New York City.
Let's hit a couple.
Not what they hoped
No,
for.
not at all. For Vancouver,
I think they've lost. I just want to note, I don't think they've lost in like 7 games.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're
right.
Well, they have 4 straight shutouts, so that helps. Keeping you in games. And of course, they are still in the Supporters' Shield race. They are still in the race for the top of the East. I do think, as you talked about with Miami and Cincinnati, points lost, points won. I do think this is 2 points lost for Montreal. They had Toy, Kyoto, and Georgi Mihailovic in the starting lineup, I believe, for the first time in MLS this year. They had a ton of possession, a ton of chances. They were not able to score, but Sean Johnson is a big part of that. He made one of the best saves of the weekend on a deflected shot. Let's hit a couple of these games quickly. Let's start with Nashville, Vancouver, the debut and first start for Shaq Moore. Big one for Nashville. They're not able to get out with the win. They tie 1-1, but the thing that stands out to me about this team is with Shaq Moore in there, they can play Teal Bunbury and Sapong and Hani Mukhtar, because if Wheel's in, they had to play 5 in the back because he's not a natural fullback, and with Miller in, you don't get the same attacking impetus going forward. Shaq Moore's going to do so much by himself on that right wing. It gives flexibility for Gary Smith to play with the lineup, so I thought that was cool to see. And shout out to Cody Cropper after the game, giving his signed gloves to a young Vancouver Whitecaps fan. Her family moved because her dad got relocated for work from Vancouver to Nashville, and she's been missing Vancouver, and she's a huge Whitecaps fan, and she's a goalkeeper. Aww. And so Cody Cropper went and hung out with her after the game. Sarita Patel, who covers the team, put out the story, and it was awesome to watch. So shouts to Cody Cropper for just being a good person. We'll give you that all the time on this show. San Jose, a devastating 2-2 home draw against RSL. But you guys, we've underrated. We have not spoken enough about Jefferson Savarino. He gets the game-tying goal in stoppage time. His 5th goal to go along with 2 assists and I believe 9 appearances since he has returned. Jordan, we sort of talked about this as like, yeah, they need more attacking piece. He was a good winger when he was in this league, but he has grown since he left, and now he's playing as a 10 and a second forward, and he has kept RSL sort of afloat over the last few weeks without Bobby Wood, without Rubio Rubin, without Damir Kreilach to help him in the attack.
Yeah, but I think what keeps RSL afloat is their never say die attitude.
The will to win,
It's
baby.
like they really do. This team is just like mentally so clicked on, and that's why they score stoppage time, game tying goals. So Savarino is good, and I think it works in the way that Pablo Mastroeni wants his team to play. That there is some fluidity in the way that they attack, so he can pop out wide, which is where he played when he first came. Now he's playing a little bit more centrally. He's so technically good on the ball, and he's just a killer in the box. And that's what RSL needs. Like that goal that he scored off his chest in with a volley, it's so technically perfect, and RSL needs a little bit, like they have the rough and tough edges, but they needed a little bit of a calm, cool connector, a playmaker, and that's what they knew they were going to get that with Savarino, and he's been that and more.
Yeah, would love to see them add to it, but I'll take it for now. Calen?
Well, no, I just was gonna Justin Miram's like slice and dice. I don't know what you call it on the sideline where he's cutting Nathan. I think turning him every which way. That was.
Is he getting better, by the way, Miram? I just feel like he's like in the combo again. I love it.
He was so exhausted after this game that I don't remember who on San Jose came over to like sort of say good game, and he literally hugged him, and you could see him just lean all his weight on the player and talking. And I think the talking was like, don't walk away because I kind of need you to stay here right now. He was gassed after this one, but he has given them some huge performances. He is, he was out. He's talked about it. Out of Orlando, he was sort of done. And then he came to Atlanta and sort of sparked his desire to play. And he has been really good at RSL and has continued to trash our takes on RSL and then made them very legitimate when he gets on the field and plays for them. Let's talk about another big moment on Saturday night. New England, 0-0 draw against TFC. We gave Sean Johnson a love. Now we got to give it to Georgie Petrovic because if you have not seen it, go watch the highlight. It was a penalty kick awarded to TFC, I think around the 83rd, 84th minute. DeAndre Carr cuts inside in the box. He winds up to take a shot. Polster steps in front, gets a slight touch on the ball. DeAndre Carr then takes a chunk out of Polster's leg. It was called a penalty kick on the field. VAR said, I believe there's a clear and obvious error, that it shouldn't be a penalty. The referee goes to watch it, comes back, maintains the call on the field, says it is a penalty. Carlos Heel's pointing at the big screen monitor. Everyone else is yelling. No one thinks it was a penalty on the field. And then our own Charlie Davies gets his big moment while livid about the call. Georgie Petrovic steps up. He saves the penalty. And Charlie, at full volume on the broadcast, yells, "Ball don't lie," which is the best moment of the season. And Calen, he was right. Georgie Petrovic made it so that the ball don't lie.
No, it was almost like 4 different universes came together for Charlie to have this moment. Like he had to eat a lot of Cheez-Its in the studio early on training, getting ready for this, then the instant replay. And I did instant replay with Charlie a couple times this year, and he gets jacked up. So I'd love to he brought that energy to the broadcast. So that was fun. But I'm with him. I haven't seen instant replay this week, but I feel like I got Charlie's take on the broadcast.
I did it with him this week, and he didn't say anything on instant replay. He just made Phil run the clip of him screaming "Ball don't lie" from the game. He didn't want to do it again.
Wow, that's even a boss move. Just be like, play the tape. That's awesome.
Roll the tape.
But I mean, he clearly Polster, not to go reenact it, but I think he gets the ball.
He does.
And then he just gets smacked from behind. So I couldn't believe it. Took me one replay and one Charlie yell to be like, yeah, I agree with you. But I don't know how that one stood. It looked very clear and obvious to me that it didn't go the other way. But Petrovic, again, Matt Turner leaves. And we talk about a team that's been playing a little bit more defensive-minded as approach. They sat in a little bit more. They play a little bit more defensive-minded, and then they had that one big chance on the break, and that should have been enough. But in this case, wasteful. I think it just takes it off the wrong foot.
He being, by the way, Giacomo Veroni, who is the DP replacement for Buxa, which I'm not saying he has to be Buxa day one, but this would have been a nice one for him to put in, get a win against TFC, push into the playoff spot. And it was on a plate for him. Like, it was there for him to finish. So that'll be a frustrating one. It'll be interesting to watch him sort of try and bounce back from that one as the Revs, they need to put 3 points up soon. Like, you can't continue to sit below the playoff line and expect to turn it around. And with Josie Altidore going on loan and Veroni coming in, this is probably the group that's going to have to take them the rest of the way. Speaking of the playoff line, Chicago Fire, they've been approaching it. They can smell it from down the street. They know the doors are open. They know that the baked goods are out of the oven. They're just trying to get into the store to try and grab one. And we have talked a ton when we talk about Chicago Fire, obviously about Shaqiri, but in the homegrown front, Gaga Slonina, it sounds like his move to Chelsea is done. Eric Gutierrez Brian Gutierrez. I do that all the time. Eric Gutierrez plays for Mexico and in the Netherlands, Brian Gutierrez, homegrown attacker for Chicago Fire. But Jordan, you wanted to talk about Victor Pineda a little bit, who has been inserted into the central midfield over the last few games and helped a lot.
I think Pineda has been good because, and Jimenez, there's a lot of pressure on him because he's a DP and he costs a lot of money. Did he get come down from a DP contract this year? He's still DP. He's still a DP. Jimenez, right?
Yes.
Gaston Jimenez.
He got re-signed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So, and there was a lot of talk when that happened, just because I think there's so many good things that Jimenez does, especially on the ball, and he can pick out just a beautiful little dipped ball.
Sorry, I was out of it, by the way. I have said everyone's name wrong. It's Mauricio Pineda. Victor Pineda.
Yeah,
no
I just
longer
said
plays
Pineda.
for the Chicago Fire. I'm going to go see myself out. I am so
Calen,
pissed.
remember when we said we were going to take
you guys
over?
should
Here
take
we
over.
It's
are.
actually my fault. I played with Victor.
Yeah,
so
that's what Calen
should've
always
known.
talks to me about Victor Pineda. And Benji
Well,
Hoya, that's half our conversations.
You said Victor, and I was like, that's not his name. I'm just going to call him Pineda, not his first name. We're not that close, like me and Ravel.
Yeah, you and Ravel, boys.
Do you know what the solve is? Everyone put their first names on the back of their kids. Everybody.
Everyone.
We would just have 47 Michaels and Johns and Andrews to sift through, but fair.
Perfect. We wouldn't have to deal with
Okay,
it. All the...
Jordan, let's pretend the last 2.5 minutes didn't happen. Please, tactically, tell us things about Chicago Fire that sound smart.
Yeah, well, Pineda comes in and he's played a few different positions for them, mostly the 6 or as a center back. But what he does, I think, with this Fire team is there is so much talk about how they go forward and what Shaqiri can do and what Jairo Torres is going to be able to do. But what I think Pineda does is just kind of sits, wins balls, connects the pass, lets Navarro next to him have a little bit more freedom in movement. I'm not saying Pineda doesn't add to the attack at times, but I think he adds a little bit more defensive stability centrally, which has made it difficult for Chicago to get broken down. So maybe what he lacks in some of the distribution that Jimenez adds to the team, he gains in simplicity, in ball winning, in hard work ethic, which we know teams can't be built off of just players that can dish the final pass. Like in MLS, you're going to have some players who are willing to mix it up and get a little bit scrappy. And I think Pineda adds that to this Fire team. And they seem to just play a little bit more solid when he's on the pitch.
It's been fun to watch. I think for Chicago, 0-0, but I thought this was an entertaining game. Part of the reason why was also Thiago Almada being in the starting lineup after Gonzalo Pineda basically saying, I almost said Mauricio Pineda, I am a mess right now. Gonzalo Pineda basically saying day in and day out, he's not doing the things he needs to be on the field. We know how talented he is. Then he comes in this game, he's hitting 50-yard passes. He's, giving goes, getting into the box. He is a difference maker. I think he is the best chance creator on that team. They need him on the field, so I think exciting to see him out there, but it'll be interesting to see how long that lasts for him and sort of what the future looks like with Atlanta United. Let's hit 2 last games before we close things up. Of course, Charlotte-Columbus got postponed, so that game has to be rescheduled. Jordan had a really good night in the studio waiting for that one to kick off for about 6.5 hours. We are sorry for that one, but that one, you still have to follow the news. It has not come out yet when that game will be scheduled for. Austin FC, 2-0 wins at Sporting Kansas City to continue their Supporter Shield race. Credit to Austin FC. I'm not an anti-Austin FC person. I'm just saying Philly's going to win it. And I actually thought in this game, it was all the things for SKC. I actually thought they played well. I thought Cam Duke's first yellow card was a harsh call. The second one was the right call, and he should know on a yellow card when to make that play. From that moment on, SKC had a penalty kick. They created numerous chances, and the opening goal for Austin, which really sealed the whole game, went through Poolskam's hands, and it just was all the things for KC of like, you can play good soccer, you can create good moments, but they don't finish. They have the one huge error, and it's just not going their way this year, and it's sort of scary to watch.
It just is it's hard to watch, really. I feel like it's a little bit painful because I've been a part of those teams. I think you guys probably have been a part of those teams. I don't know when and where, but like this is so difficult because you're trying everything and things seem to be going in the right direction, and then you miss the first chance and you're like, okay, we got to get another one. And it felt like the same script over and over again for Sporting Kansas City. And it just feels like some years it's just not your year. And I had the advantage of in midweek going to the Open Cup game and getting to talk to Peter Vermees. And he said the thing that he's most proud of this team is the competitiveness and the commitment is still there. And I think that's what you're talking about, Goss, is this team still has, they're creating chances. But the one thing that he said to me that stuck out, and I think it applies to this game too, is if they don't capitalize their early opportunities, then they put themselves under it. And they were at home. This was really difficult to see them not capitalize early again, because we know teams in MLS, when you're at home and you're in the lead, it is difficult for other teams to come back and make a game of it. So it just is painful. It hurts to watch. I don't know. I don't want any team to have to face that because it's so miserable.
They lost an Open Cup semifinal and then went down a man, and they still drew a penalty kick, which Daniel Shalhoub had saved and created some chances. So we're just going to be out here awarding them 3 points and being like, congratulations, SKC, just for literally trying in this one and how tough life
and that was been. That was so painful, too, to have the penalty saved midweek and then the penalty saved in this one. It was like, oh, God.
You guys are being way too nice to Sporting Kansas City. I feel uncomfortable with this.
I mean, I'm not thinking everything is great, but I do feel like it's painful knowing that those situations, like even just to get a goal in this one, like you get a goal early, who's to say Austin's not going to come and do what Austin did? But I just, it feels painful watching, because it's just some of those times you're in a season where it's like, I don't know what else to do, and it kind of feels like that's where Sporting is. Like I don't know.
I hear
what else
you,
to do.
and a Vermees team is not going to quit, right? So you know that's going to happen. But still, like it is a lot of the same mistakes as far as even the red cards. They've played down a man at times throughout early in matches, like earlier first half red cards, which if you're at a little bit of a deficit already, things aren't going your way, is not going to help. Now some of that you can say is coming from that competition or compete or will to try to fight, but it's just they've never really got the balance right. And then the mistake from Pulskamp as well is not going to help. It seemed a little bit kind of like actually Austin last week with the ball going through the goalkeeper's legs was one that reminded me of that immediately. And then from the Austin side of things, it's just we'll continue to go back to this, but just Druisi, just his ability again to like always find that moment. And this one, we were talking about directing traffic earlier, but the way he's just kind of like, all right, moving pieces around and then sees the play way ahead of time to continue his run forward and breaks through that back line. And then, he's going to finish from there. So I actually think Druisi might be my pick for the, you didn't ask me, but for the Golden Boot with things opening up, he's just too good to I understand. I would there's a part of me, my heart is more with the sort of domestic striker core that I'm kind of hoping continue this run for a lot of reasons, but what I'm seeing from Druisi right now has been amazing. So I think if it's not that, it might be up and around the MVP conversation. And I wouldn't necessarily write off Austin either in this conversation we have for the Supporter Shield. And they just can overwhelm you with the amount of chances. I think they had like 3 or 4 goals called off.
They did, and probably
just
incorrectly
constantly threatening that back
well.
line. Really? You got to watch Cincy replay presented by Jesus to see the rest of that. Yeah.
Complaining about goals called off the whole time. Final game of the weekend: FC Dallas 1-0 win over the LA Galaxy. Franco Jara scored a goal. Yay, Franco Jara. And the LA Galaxy, obviously 1-0 loss, but they get a chance to rebound quite soon, because Wednesday night is the Leagues Cup showcase. As I said, LA Galaxy against Chivas at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN and Univision. And then the doubleheader following that one up, LAFC versus Club America, 11:15 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN and Univision as well. And this one, it's sold out at SoFi in LA. It is going to be the first ever soccer games at that stadium, which hosted the Super Bowl last year, which is a spaceship that's brought down and placed right in the middle of LA, and as cool a stadium as there is on the planet. And it is just one of those huge events. We know the full Leagues Cup coming next year, and this is sort of a little bit of a taste of it. But you're talking about the biggest name probably in MLS in the Galaxy against the biggest name in Mexico with the most trophies in Chivas that has the largest fan base here in the U.S. And then you're talking LAFC, the new kids on the block, with Vela, with Gareth Bale, with Chiellini against Club America, which is the Gigantes in Mexico. This is going to be an incredible event, you guys. And it's kind of one of those, I'm not going to sit down and tear it apart tactically. It's just, I want all the vibes. I just want the energy from it. I just want to hang out on Wednesday.
You're here for the vibes.
I just want to hang out on Wednesday and watch a little soccer, you know?
Really? I'm looking for more than that. I think these teams are going to take it seriously. And the part for me that it's a little tricky, especially for, LA Galaxy have to focus on their season, right? But I think they still are also fighting for respect within their own city, but then also with this Liga MX and MLS, and this might be, they're not going to be in Champions League unless they get all the way and win MLS Cup at this point. But for LAFC too, I think they're looking at this as a big opportunity to continue what they did through CCL. They didn't get to finish it before, but as far as the LAFC owning LA, but I think they also want to have a bigger presence in Mexico. And for me, I also look at it, it's looped into this broader conversation of what's happening with All-Star coming up too, where you can say, all right, yeah, All-Star is really just an exhibition match, right? But how would some of the sort of comebacks I heard from MLS winning is oh yeah, but you've never won CCL, right? Well, okay. We fast forward and we see MLS winning CCL, and then the next one's oh, but our clubs consistently, consistently our big clubs versus your big clubs. And so I think more and more these types of matches are really good for a lot of players to get experience. But also I don't think it's just going to be a lot of young players trotted out for glorified friendly. I think it'll have a little bit more to it. And when you couple that with All-Star, which is more of that celebration and kind of fun party exhibition. Although we'll see, maybe it'll turn up a little bit more than that. But I think All-Star, it's hard for me to read so much into the result. Whereas these matches, I'm more okay, these guys train every week together. This is how their system fits against yours and the talent overall. And you get a better sort of read on situations like that.
Also, I think LAFC is going to go into this game thinking, okay, we have a lot of good players that don't start on our team.
Here's Seba Mendes'
90
chance
minutes
to get a start. Guys like that. Yeah.
Seba Mendes. I know Calen Acosta was out over the weekend with yellow card accumulation, but him, their wingers depth, their center back depth. This is a team who's going to go into this game, and no matter who they put out, are probably going to look really good. LA Galaxy, I just looked, they have Sporting Kansas City coming up in the weekend, which is a team that they need to get points off of. So I don't know how they're going to set up in this game, and they don't have quite the same champagne problems that LAFC have. So who are they going to come out? But I agree with Calen in a lot of sense that there's some pride on the line and some who is going to be the team, because there could be people coming to this game who don't root for either team. So are they going to find an LA team that they like to root for?
Yeah. No, it is a huge opportunity. It is also a chance. I think you guys are both right in that these are two clubs, LAFC and LA Galaxy, that are trying to put a shot across the bow in that Southern California, Northern Mexico area of being we can be a team for everyone. Chicharito and Vela being there will be a huge part of that and a huge deal. But the style of soccer and the way they play, I think, can be, especially for LAFC, can be as well. I also remind you that multiple Club America managers have been fired for losing to MLS teams in the past. So there's only so much
spots on the line.
There's only so much that Chivas and America can not put into this one. Club America, by the way, this weekend, Sunday night to close out the weekend, went up a man against Leon in the 87th minute, tied 2-2. Gave up a penalty kick in the 105th minute to lose that game because Liga MX be wildin', and it's amazing and it's fun to watch. It is one of my favorite leagues on the planet. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, the full Leagues Cup coming next year where we will see every team involved. But this is going to be a great opportunity to continue to see these two leagues come together, work together, get to know each other. So LA Galaxy against Chivas at SoFi Stadium, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN and Univision, and then following that one up immediately afterwards, LAFC versus Club America, 11:15 p.m. Eastern Time. to kick it off. So that's all for us here today. Fun show with both of you. I appreciate you both being with me. It's exciting for you. You'll both be in the clip that Anders will roll out when Philadelphia clinches the Supporters Shield to be like, boom, David said it, and we'll have the Ghana jersey there, and we'll have Calen's all-black hoodie there as well, which you don't know which day it is then, because Calen's a Brooklyn guy. You got to wear an all-black hoodie every single day. But thank you both for being here. Andrew Rubio will be back. I have zero idea when. I guess we're not that stressed about it. If you are in Minnesota or going for All-Star, live 7 p.m. local time on Sunday, we will be at Blackheart to do a live taping for our Monday show. We are also going to be in Minnesota doing a live show, I believe, post-game of the All-Star at the Brew Hall in Allianz Field. So if you are going to the game, I think you can come hang out there after and hang out with us while we do our post-game show. Last year we did it with Jorge Campos at the hotel, but this year will be fun as well, and we look forward to being with everyone. Thank you again to Jordan for stepping in to that center back role for us, and Calen, I appreciate the work you did pressing up top. Know this off the Blanco situation. I'm going to go back and watch every goal you scored in MLS, and I'm going to message you and say, did you think that was going to go in when you shot that? Did you mean to shoot that? And if I can find a little wiggle room, I'm going to see if I can get into the stats section and see if
I've got one. I've got one.
I'm
not telling you which one.
I'm coming for you, Calen. But thank you both for being here once again, and thank you all for listening, and we'll see you again on Thursday.
Congratulations, you made it through more than an hour of extra time. That means you love the show, and if you love the show, you probably want more episodes. Click right here for more episodes of Extra Time, and here to subscribe to the MLS YouTube channel. Thanks for following along.